Hey, thanks for checking out the video. I'm going to try to do a couple of things today. I'm going to first break down the new footage that's come in for the George Floyd murder. And once I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the second thing, which is the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force policy, and just give you guys like a brief introduction to like what a police use of force policy looks like in the United States. It'll be very general, very basic, but just this way, as people are paying attention to what's happening in the media and they hear terms being thrown around, they have a little bit of a foundation they can use to understand things better. And again, the goal of these videos is just to inform the general public a little bit about police use of force issues and policing in general, so that they can understand what's happening. I think these are important issues, and this is a transformative time with what's happening. Please hit, if these are helpful, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and ask any questions. And the future videos will be shaped by feedback of people, so you can have an input. And again, I'm a former police officer, and I've been involved in lots of use of force incidents and up to deadly force. Now I'm a PhD student, and I study police use of force at the University of Missouri. So I want to see if I can use the lens that I'm developing, studying these incidents for a living now, and use it to help people better understand what's happening. So first, I'm going to start with the new footage. So the last video you can find down below. One of my other videos, I go through the original footage that came out that was so outrageous, showing the shin across the neck of George Floyd that looked like a straight up homicide to me. And now we're going to see some other footage. There's no sound in the footage, and we can see I slowed this down. There's 1, 2, 3. There's 4 officers here. There's 2 officers look like they're controlling the bottom half of Mr. Floyd's body, and then there's this same suspect here who has his shin across his neck. And then we're going to go to some security footage. And we can see the officers, the police, at the time they were officers, approaching on foot. And this is going to be the vehicle Mr. Floyd's in. He's in the driver's side. And I believe this is the suspect that ends up choking him to death, strangling him to death with his shin. And I'm going to cover that in another video, the difference between strangulation and choking somebody, and whether or not strangulation should be a use of force tactic that's used. And now, this is before the initial video, and we're going to see here there's a little bit of a struggle erupts as this officer is trying to take him into custody. It's difficult to see exactly what's happening, but it looks like there is some type of physical altercation. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on in this video about what level of force this would be classified as, and what level of resistance this would be classified as. But just bear with me, and I'll get to that in a bit. So it's difficult to tell, but it looks like Mr. Floyd might be sort of not resisting, not allowing them to move his body. We can't tell if he's like pulling away or not, or if he's just, going limp, or not allowing them to get a hold of his arms. This angle and this level of detail in the video, I'm going to say it's difficult to tell, but it's obvious there is some type of resistance taking place to me when I watch this. This is the way I see it. And if I were watching this video up to now, I would have nothing that I would be alarming to me as somebody who's watched hundreds of these videos. And then we can see the struggle here, and his hands are behind his back. Looks like he's in handcuffs. And this is a pretty workaday stuff at this point. This is nothing. There's nothing to me that's unusual. Looking at this video, it looks like there's some type of resistance. I can't tell if it's like sort of active or passive. So the heads look like they have some difficulties getting him in handcuffs. And now he's in handcuffs. They're walking him over to the side here to sit him down. And this all seems very reasonable to me. I don't know the totality of the circumstances. I don't think we'll know that for quite some time if we ever know. But based on what I know about this incident up to now, I don't see anything that's alarming to me. And he sat down. He seems to be having a difficult time, and the sad thing is you're dealing with people all day who are having a difficult time, and they're people in their worst moments. I don't know if he's tired from the struggle, if he's upset, if he's having some medical issues. We'll have to wait for the medical reports to know what was involved in terms of his medical condition. I don't know if there was one or what. It looks like he's it's difficult to tell, but it looks like he's not necessarily being very cooperative. It looks like he might be, but nothing major. It looks like the officer's talking to him at this point, and is not acting in a way that doing anything I would have a problem with. And they walk him over to the other vehicle, and up to this point, still have no issues. Again, I don't know everything about what happened, but based on what I do, I don't have any issues. Okay, and then you see him sort of just collapse to the ground. And again, we don't know if that's a medical, thing that he collapsed, or if that's him, I don't want to be arrested. We don't know what his reasons were. If he's not complying because he's making some type of political statement, or he doesn't want to go to jail. I don't know. So it could be medical. It could be some type of passive resistance, but falling to the ground, and it could be interpreted as a form of resistance, is not cooperating with the officers. I'm sure, you've had. Remember with my kids trying to get them to do stuff, they would just go limp to the ground. The same thing with people that are in custody. They could be in handcuffs and they go limp, and they make it very difficult for you to move them. And that's a form of resistance. Now, what that warrants in terms of physical force would be very low levels of force, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Let me see, have another unit roll up and obstruct the view. So that's basically the footage that I wanted to go through, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about use of force and when officers should use force and what level of force they should use. And this is a diagram I'm showing right now, something I found on the internet. I thought it was just helpful in sort of visualizing what a use of force continuum looks like. And the United States has it's like 18,000 different police departments. So there's just so many different variations on police of force policies and ways that they're implemented. But generally speaking, I have found in the research I've conducted and my experience interacting with different agencies in different parts of the country, that something like this tends to be adopted, where the level of force that's being utilized by the person that you're trying to arrest, that you react based on the level of resistance that they're engaging in. And then the level of response that you're permitted within policy is based on, was it reasonable for you to use the level of force you were using given the amount of force that was being used by the person that didn't want to be taken into custody, if that makes sense. So if you look at the first level here, like the blue box, you have a compliant person. So you just, as an officer, you talk to them. You say, hey, sit in the patrol car. Here, turn around, put these handcuffs back on you. They'll comply. You have a compliant person. And the vast majority of people that you interact with as a police officer are compliant. And police officers are going about their business on the daily, and that's what they want. They want to just go about their business. They don't want to be involved in fights, and so they're happy to have compliance, and good police officers, the vast majority, try to earn that by giving reasonable commands and convincing people to do things. It's the easiest way to do business. Then you have what they call passive resistance. So this would be, and again, the video with Mr. Floyd, it was difficult for me to tell based on that video what was happening. But this would be somebody who just goes limp, and they don't want to be put in the back of the patrol car. They're resisting, but they're not using force against you to stop you from gaining control over them, if that makes sense. So I looked it up with the Minneapolis Police Department and their use of force policy, and here's how they put it. And this is a quote. They call it passive resistance, and it's, quote, a response to police efforts to bring a person into custody or control for detainment or arrest. This is behavior initiated by a subject when the subject does not comply with verbal or physical control efforts, yet the subject does not attempt to defeat the officer's control efforts. That's the end of the quote. That's the policy. I found their policy online. So it's like going limp, but you're not like trying to knock the officer's hands away or anything like that. And if that's happening, you pick them up. You grab them by the arm and you guide them to the patrol car. That's a reasonable response in terms of use of force. And that's kind of what I observed in that video. So that's why I was okay with it. Then we go to active resistance. So the way that the Minneapolis Police Department's use of force policy, I'll quote that again. It's from their use of force policy. It's a quote of active resistance, quote, a response to police efforts to bring a person into custody or control for detainment or arrest. A subject engages in active resistance when engaging in physical actions or verbal behavior reflecting an intention to make it more difficult for officers to achieve actual physical control. So it's when they do something, they engage in some type of overt physical action, and here they say that could extend like expressing an intent verbally to stop you, to physically resist you, move your hands away, to, knock the handcuffs away, to, engage in a physical action to prevent you from taking them into custody. So this is this level 3 here, this yellow. And then you would have a response would be, some type of arm control technique, or maybe taking them down to the ground, something along those lines. And again, each agency is going to be different, and it's going to be complex, and it's based on the totality of the circumstances, and how big is the officer, how big is the suspect, what's the severity of the crime. There's a whole bunch of variables. So this is very general, just sort of to give people an idea, a basic idea. And then if we step it up to level 4, the orange bar here, you have this sort of assaultive, which is aggressive action when you're assaulting the officer. And Minneapolis, in their use of force policy, they call it assaultive aggressive action, quote, behavior initiated by a subject that may or may not be in response to police efforts to bring the person into custody or control. A subject engages in active aggression, that's the keyword, active aggression, when presenting behaviors that constitute an assault or the circumstances reasonably indicated that an assault or injury to any person is likely to occur at any moment. So it's like someone's going to punch you, someone's going to hit you with a stick, somebody's going to try to kick you, someone's going to assault you, or someone says, I'm going to kick your ass, and they put their fists up and they come at you and they're ready to start throwing hands. You're being assaulted. I mean, if you look in the statute for whatever state or jurisdiction you live in, if you're being assaulted, then what can an officer do? So level 4, they can use defensive tactics. Depending on the agency, this is sort of like, if someone's punching me, I can punch them. Someone's kicking me, well, I can kick them. I can hit them with a baton. I can use my taser. There's a whole bunch of, there's stun bags. There's a whole variety of different techniques that can be employed by police officers at this level. And again, it's based on the totality of the circumstances. This is just a diagram that's just for the broad strokes. And then if we move up to this level 5, this is this sort of deadly force encounter. And with a deadly force encounter, then officers are authorized themselves to use deadly force. And so this is a person pulls a gun, charges at an officer with a knife, and there's no obstacle between them. The officer's not obligated to be stabbed or to be shot. They have a lawful right to defend themselves, in which I believe, that's very, very reasonable. That it's something that should be The problem is when these things go out of whack. And when I look at the video that I watched, I don't see a reasonable response. What I see is somebody engaging in what looks like passive resistance, going limp, not wanting to go to jail, having a medical condition, maybe, I don't know. And then I see somebody using, using violence, putting their shin across the side of their neck and pressing them into the ground when there's all kinds of indications that there's a medical condition. This is completely out of whack. The altercation was completely over. So this is not a defensive tactics type of issue. This is nothing like that. This is an ethical question. From everything that I've observed, and seems very clear to me, that this is just somebody murdering somebody, not an officer making a mistake or being outside of the matrix or acting in good faith. This is malicious. But I just wanted to give everyone sort of if you're confused about when officers can use force, how much force they can use, this is sort of the broad strokes. Generally speaking, in the United States, this is kind of how it works. If this was helpful, please subscribe and comment below, ask questions. If you want a video made on a certain topic, please let me know. I'm more than happy to do it. I really want people to have as much information as possible so that as a society we can make good decisions about how we move forward and manage these issues. And again, thank you very much for your time. I value it, and I appreciate you joining me.